I'd like to call the meeting of the Winnipeg Police Board to order. Mr. Chair, can I look to you? You have a motion?
Yes, if I could, I would like to move the motion to have the Vice Chair, Colleen Mayer, act as Chair today, and I will, I guess, be a voting member.
Damon, you want to move it? A second here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 7th, 2024 meeting of the Winnipeg Police Board. I want to thank all of those in attendance and all of those that are joining us online in the videoing into the committee room here, and I'm looking forward to chairing this meeting. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, Dakota people, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I'd like to begin with some introductions. Of course, we have our board members, Damon Johnson and Daphne Penrose, and joining us, of course, is our chair, Marcus Chambers. We have our board secretary, Shauna Curtin, and I am looking around the room to members of our Winnipeg Police Service who are with us today, Chief Danny Smythe, Deputy Chief Art Standard, Deputy Chief Bauer, Deputy Chief Scott Halley, Inspector Jennifer McKinnon, Superintendent Dave Dalal. I also have our, I have our policing professionals, our executive directors, Kim Nicholson and Tara Holoka. And I also want to welcome Constable Danny McKinnon and Kelly Den, of course. So welcome to everybody. I need a motion to accept the minutes of our March 8th meeting. Daphne, seconder, Damon. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. I also, Mr. Clerk, I have to get a motion for a leave of absence.
Correct, for members Kevin Selch and Mayor Gilliam.
Thank you very much. Can I get someone to approve that motion? Damon, second, Daphne. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Mr. Clerk, do we have any delegates today?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We have our first delegation, Kate Kaler, is appearing via Zoom. It's Kate Kaler to turn on her microphone. She's speaking to items 2 and 9 via Zoom. 10 minutes.
Good morning, Kate.
Good morning. You can all hear me fine? So, good, thank you. For the record, the Police Accountability Coalition, or PAC, is a coalition of over 100 community-based organizations committed to seeking meaningful change to address police violence and systemic racism. Our brief, community-based organizations call for police accountability and reallocation of resources, lays out recommendations for all levels of governance on policing and justice systems. Our coalition includes Black and Indigenous-led as well as allied organizations. I'm here today on behalf of PAC to speak to both Chief Smythe's report as well as the update on recruitment of his replacement. In the bigger picture, I'm here because we are concerned that despite all the evidence that demonstrates how crime is largely poverty-driven, we as a society continue to invest more and more in what does not work rather than in what does. As you all know, the Winnipeg Police Board has a proactive policy-level role to play in promoting ethical policing. The board establishes policies for the effective management of the Winnipeg Police Service. The WPS cannot be effectively managed on a budget that is unsustainable, no matter what other levels of government choose to chip in. The recent announcement by Minister Wiebe that the province will pay overtime to try and curb retail theft is just another example of spending more on what does not work. I'm unaware of any further details, but what we do know is that more overtime is not the solution to an organization that is already overtasked and is failing to create that culture of safety for all. Winnipeg's crime severity index is up, and clearance rates for the 2022 were only at 39%. Citizen satisfaction with the WPS, as flawed as the 2024 survey was, given that no race-based data was collected, is only 54%. Also, though, PAC member PAC members continue to see the divide between the WPS and too many of the community members they are meant to serve grow. We also know that for members of the WPS, all overtime, either regular or special duty, is factored into their pensions. So future Winnipeg police boards and mayors and councils will have that bill to pay and may not be able to rely on whomever holds power on Broadway or in Ottawa for that matter. However, again, what is more problematic about continuing to throw more money at policing is that it only gets us more security measures rather than actual safety. Many point to the success of the measures brought in at liquor stores. It is only a qualified success because the evidence is in the spike in retail theft elsewhere. It just moved the problem on. Continuing to overinvest in what does not work would not fit my definition of ethical and ethics in general or ethical policing. An ethical approach to crime and public safety must be evidence-based, and again, the evidence demonstrates that poverty is the primary root cause of the majority of crime. Is this board responsible for ending poverty? Of course not. However, you do have that proactive policy level role, and so should be considering what role the WPS should have in the larger public safety considerations. Chief Smyth's report cites that of the 247,373 events that the WPS responded to, only 863 incidents resulted in either the application of force or the presentation of a weapon. And yet the chief and other senior officers continue to insist that police must lead all mental health calls or wellness checks. We all know that the police involved deaths covered by the media in just this past year alone. However, it's not PAC's intention to use those deaths to make a point. Those investigations and hopefully full public inquiries need to happen. But we already have enough evidence that there are more effective community-led responses to people in crisis than the police. Our position paper found that there are at least 107 operating across North America. One of the oldest, Cahoots, took on 17% of the Springfield Police Department calls on a budget of $2.2 million, while that police service's total budget is $90 million. However, Chief Smyth's takeaway from this, which he made public in a Substack post, was to use the fact that an evaluation of Cahoots in 2019 demonstrated that a police presence was still required in 1 of every 67 calls. So seeming to imply that the police should have been at all 67 calls instead of recognizing and celebrating that 66 calls were answered without police. One of the most recent community-led responses is Toronto's, based on its pilot success, answering 6,351 calls and only asking for police assistance in 240 of those. It is being expanded across the city. It's also led to other innovative approaches, such as a uniquely Indigenous-led cultural crisis support approach. In Winnipeg, given we have the largest urban Indigenous population, and we know that Indigenous peoples are overrepresented in poverty, which of course impacts mental health, this is something we should all be looking to replicate. I also have to note that these numbers, in comparison to the comparatively small numbers of calls that the ARC responded to, are our alternative response to citizens in crisis here in Winnipeg. Only 800 and some, and yet with less than a fulsome program evaluation, that program is being expanded. Our position paper, which we have submitted to the board, goes into much greater detail, and we'd be happy to meet with the board members who could not make our last joint meeting, or with those who did but want to go into further detail. However, I did want to go back to Chief Smyth's report because one of PAC's main research positions is that just a police presence can escalate a situation. I found the language in the report noteworthy. It is the idea that a presentation of a weapon is unusual when in reality it is not. Police officers are armed. They always present with weapons. And police presence is noted as the first stage on the use of force continuum. It does not matter how polite and professional the police officer is. The message is clear. Comply or this can get worse. When someone is in distress, forced compliance should not be our goal. The person in distress is the person we need to be focusing on. Our objectives in replacing the ARC model with a community-led response would be, first and foremost, people in medical crisis receive a medical response first. Winnipeg Police Service no longer responds to calls for service that are outside their scope of expertise. A reduction in overall calls for service to the Winnipeg Police Service would also be an objective. Better service to the community through a more effective evidence and community-based approach. Our position paper also contains one lived example of a wellness check that went horribly wrong, in that the police took a very long time to respond to it, and when they showed up, they deemed the person to be fine. When the person, their friend, finally got to that person and got them into a mental health hospital, got them to the hospital, they were immediately admitted for a full because of a full psychiatric breakdown. So the police were not able to identify that this person was in serious trouble. Another example that got some reporting in the media was a situation in which the police obtained a confession from a woman with a brain injury. After interrogating this person for 10 hours, they didn't seem to factor in her brain injury would play a role. And we know what happened with that court case. So how does the above tie in with the recruitment update? It's simple. PAC has submitted a letter to the police board. We hope that you take it into consideration. And again, we'd always like to meet and discuss it further. But at this point in time, we have an opportunity to create real change with new leadership. One person will not be able to change the unhealthy culture that has taken root in the Winnipeg Police Service. However, it would be a great place to start. So what PAC would like to see in its next police chief is a person who is aware of their audience and communicates honestly and effectively with professionalism and cultural competence. This includes honestly communicating on current policies and why they are practiced. It's a person with the ability to actively listen to dissenting voices without becoming defensive or reactionary. This includes criticism of policies with a demonstrated understanding of how these policies work against best practices by perpetuating mistrust in policing. A person who has a strong and consistent history of authentic, hands-on, creative engagement with community groups, including those focused on community mental health organizations that serve to detask police services. This history and commitment should be accompanied by measurable markers of success. Fourth, a demonstrated commitment to systemic and cultural change within the police service with measurable and reportable markers of change in culture, policy, and practices. And finally, a person who actively seeks to form a service that represents not just the general demographics of the city of Winnipeg, but the communities that are overrepresented in policing and thus in the legal system. Thank you.
Are there any questions from board members for the delegate? Councillor Chambers.
Yes, thank you for that delegation, Kate Kaler. I always consider it a great opportunity to listen and learn whenever we do meet with PAC. With respect to the comments that you've made, though, as an elected official and as chair of the police board, I get calls from organizations such as the Biz Zones. I get calls from the Restaurant Association. I get calls from other stakeholders who have been impacted, by crime at their places of business. I have them telling me that their staff are somewhat afraid to come to work, and that something must be done. So what would your recommendation be as I'm responding to these different stakeholders in the community who are saying that they no longer wish to do business downtown, or their staff doesn't want to show up for work, or a lot of the issues that we're seeing now that again, unless we have a police presence, these issues will not get resolved.
It all comes down to what you mean by a police presence. So for the record, PAC has not called for the abolishment of the Winnipeg Police Service. So it's not that it's an anti-police service or coalition by any stretch of the imagination. So but what is the effect of what is the most appropriate role for the police to play in the larger picture of public safety? And just having, a police on every corner might make some people feel safe. It will make other people feel unsafe, but it's also, first of all, not sustainable, but also more importantly, it won't work because the crime will just move down. It will just go to where they do not see a police presence. And that's why I mentioned the Liquor Mart example, is that it started with police presence in all the stores when we had that spike. And then it moved on to actual hard security measures. And so all we did with that investment is to actually move the problem elsewhere.
So we acknowledge that there is a problem and that's something that we have to address. And of course, I know in terms of root cause, there's work being done there. There's more work that needs to be done. But until such time that those measures are put in place to address chronic recidivism of crime, and as well, getting mental health supports and addiction supports that some individuals need in our community, we still have to fix the problems that we're facing now. Otherwise, as I said, it's going to have an economic impact, especially in our downtown area.
Well, we do have an economic impact. We see it all the time in our downtown area, and elsewhere in the city. No one is going to deny that. But the issue being is that when you say more needs to be done on root causes, we never get to that more. That's the problem. We spend the amount of money we spend on policing, we spend the amount of money on courts and prisons, and we do not actually get to the actually resolving the root causes. So that's our main concern as PAC, is we are always told, well, we have to do this first and then we'll get to that. And we have seen in over 150 years in this country is we have never gotten to that point. That is what gets paid pennies, even though we know it has the most impact in resolving crime. One of my favorite quotes, I think you've heard me say it before, Councillor Chambers, I'm not sure, is it was a conservative senator, the late, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he said that given that 80% of the people we incarcerate grew up in poverty and unemployment and lack of grade 12 education, if crime abatement is the goal, then it's time that all Canadians and their governments got tough on poverty. And that would be, sorry, the late Senator Hugh Segal. His name popped into my head. So that is where we're at. And so when we have a police service that says we need more and more and more in order to do this job, but they're not getting the job done, then it's only logical that we look at what else we should be doing.
Thank you.
Any other board member? Thank you to the delegate for coming forward today. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for PAC's written submission regarding the Police Chief Recruitment Committee. I just want to acknowledge that we received it and thank you very much for that.
And thank you. And we've been told that you are actively recruiting for focus groups, so that's good to hear as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, or
Have a good day.
Mr. Clerk.
Madam Chair, yes, we have a second delegation, Jessica Peoples. Led by Jessica Peoples to the table, speaking in reference to item 6. You will have 10 minutes to present. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Okay, I made a few notes, but I don't like to go off the script. I like to talk from the heart. And I grew up in an urban, in the urban Indigenous population my whole life. I'm part of a reserve, but I've always lived here, so I understand what's going on in the parts that we're affected with. One thing I will mention is I have noticed a vast improvement with the level of bias in the policing. So thank you for addressing those things, and thank you for putting into place supports for the policing themselves so that they can help support their own families. Because we can't help other people if we haven't, filled their own cups, right? So I want to say thank you to that. What I will say is that the concept of bias-free needs to kind of extend outwards now. We're dealing with it in the police force, but for the last 2 years, I've kind of did my own little undercover work by dressing the way that I normally wouldn't dress. I would wear ratty clothes. I would wear clothes that didn't fit me. And the amount of people who would follow me around in retail stores and assume that I was going to steal was alarming. So if somebody has that trauma already, you're going to activate that feedback loop and you're going to put that person into that mindset to be combative and to be aggressive. So I think working along with retail in that sense will kind of, I guess, shine a light on what is actually happening in the mindset of people who are who dress that way and are in poverty and everything. I'm still in poverty. I technically make less than minimum wage, but I'm able to manage my money effectively. I also believe that we should bring forward some ideas in terms of education for people in poverty on how to properly manage your money and how we can, you know, go without some luxury things in order to get the base necessities. So that's something that we really don't talk about. And I've brought it up before and people have actually gotten mad at me and told me that I was discriminatory. But based on my research, and I've been researching online for like last probably about 2.5 years, playing with the algorithms and everything, there's a lot that are kind of blown up online to make it seem like it's more of a big deal than it actually is. So in terms of like the retail theft, I've been accused of stealing, and they've come to my face, and I've had workers come and yell at me. And I had to tell them I'm not stealing. I had to get managers involved, and then people would get in trouble, and then they wouldn't like me very much as a customer, so I wouldn't go back there. But I find there's quite a few people who have that bias already for a lot of Indigenous people. And this has been going on for a very long time, because I remember shopping at Portage Place Mall when I was a kid. My mom was a nurse. We would go from her staffing agency across the street to Portage Place, and we would get followed around in the mall. And that didn't happen to non-Indigenous people. So it's been going on for a very, very long time. And I think what's happening is people are just kind of fed up, and they're starting to lose their cool about it. And in turn, that turns to violence, right? So from basing it from a healthcare perspective, because I used to have a healthcare company, what we put out there is what we're going to get back. There's actually a link to quantum physics regarding that as well. It's kind of like the mirror effect. So the energy that you're giving out is the energy that you're going to receive. And that's proven by physicists. So there's been times where people have given me that terrible energy, and I've yelled at them. I said, how can you say that I'm stealing when you have no proof? I was like, leave me alone, stop following me around with your secret shoppers. And I got upset. Would I have got upset if that person didn't do that? No, it wouldn't have happened. So there are some things on both sides that we need to address and work on with the retailers. So I think that is something that can kind of move about. So like we addressed it in the police force, and I've seen a massive improvement. And I will say thank you to the police who have been very kind to me. I've had police in the past who haven't been, and in the past 3 years, it's improved. So I will say that. And I actually wanted to offer, people keep saying, who's going to step up? Who's going to step up? And I wanted to actually offer my services through my company as like a contractor. I don't know if I wanted to speak to the board about this, but I have, like, I grew up in the North End. I know what the issues are. And it just seems like none of our community leaders are giving me a voice to be able to address these things. And it's not to cause criticism towards them. It's supposed to be constructive criticism. And I've tried to network multiple times with bringing my business ideas forward. What ends up happening is my ideas get stolen. So I wanted to bring it to the police force and say that I'll offer my services to be able to address some of these things and tell you firsthand of what it's like to be in those shoes and what we can do to kind of mediate it. In terms of the retail stuff going on with the children and youth, I actually experienced something on last Saturday at 7-Eleven where youth were being very violent towards one another. And all I saw during the entire thing was this just mentality of like them being in a movie, if that makes sense. Like they weren't connected to a certain reality that we were. And it's like they were playing out these parts that they think that they're supposed to fall into based on their upbringing and based on where they came from. So it's not just one ethnicity of youth that were present. There were almost, from what I saw, it was almost every single ethnicity of youth that was at that altercation at 7-Eleven on Saturday. So this is not just addressing people in poverty, because this was at a 7-Eleven down Ness. It wasn't even in the area that we most see a lot of the crime. It's spreading out, but it often isn't talked about in those areas. I find a lot of the attention is based on people in poverty. And during my research, there are three main components that we can kind of focus on to reduce poverty, and the easiest and the least expensive is to educate people. So what I found is a lot of people on social assistance, when they want to go back to school, they actually lose their funding to go to social assistance. So they have to think, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to school, or am I going to continue to be on social assistance so I can provide for my family? So focusing on the youth and really giving them opportunities. I think in I believe it's in Toronto, they had this program. Well, I'll have to double check the city, but they had this program where police actually at nighttime got involved with the kids in low income areas and did like street sports. So it gave something for those kids to do. So if we kind of maybe implemented some things, you know, street hockey or basketball, and like I think basketball started with like, you know, those milk crates, and you can get milk crates for like $5. So it wouldn't actually cost a lot to like implement them around the city. You just have to have a ball. And it's a really easy way for the youth to see that police aren't scary. And honestly, when I grew up, I was kind of brainwashed by my community to say, stay away from police, stay away from police. And I had that mentality where I couldn't trust them. But then I also had a friend who was a police officer. So, you know, like being his friend made me see that, you know, police aren't there to hurt us. And it took a long time for me to break that mentality. And it does take a long time for us to use positive experiences in our life to change the neuroplasticity in your brain. It takes roughly 3 to 7 years, depending on the level of severity. But your brain can actually rewire itself to look for positive things in your environment rather than look for the negative things in your environment. So I would like to bring my services forward. Like, honestly, like I love my city so much that I'll write as many reports as you want for free. And I really just want people to understand that there is a biological component to this that we're not addressing. And the biological component has to do with our brains and how we perceive the world. Because how we perceive it is what we're going to take in. So like it's a survival mechanism, right? So if you, an animal, you know, gets bit by a snake, you're not going to go by that snake anymore, right? So if you keep having those negative impacts in your life, you're going to focus on that negative stuff in your life. So based on my research, it's really boils down to the neurochemistry in our brain and the neurobiology, and that can be changed through repetition, but it has to be in a supportive environment, which is exactly what this council did for me. So.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from board members? Jessica, I'm going to continue on with your positive message, and it is always a pleasure to have you here with us in our public meetings. I appreciate seeing you walk in that door. So thank you very much for allowing your voice to be heard today. I also just want to comment on something you said, and you're right. As a society, we all should be taking some self-awareness about our conscious biases and our unconscious biases. And I think that's a good message as we head into the weekend. So thank you very much. What I would like to just remind you, if you're not aware, we have a town hall on June 18th coming up. So check out that information on our website, and I would invite you to come to that.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. It's kind of like, it's easy to point the finger at other people. It's harder to point the finger in the mirror, right? So everybody, absolutely everybody needs to do that, regardless of where you come from. So,
Thank you, Jessica. Any further delegations?
No further delegations, Madam Chair.
Then we will move on to reports. Report number 1 is the report from the chairperson. You have read it and seen it. It's online. I won't read it out directly, but I want to thank the chair for making his report available. Is there any questions to this report?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to add that there are two events that I attended. One was the motorcycle ride for dad that was put on by the Winnipeg Police Association. A couple of Saturdays ago, it was very well attended, even though it was miserable weather conditions. There were so many members that were out there to support prostate research. So my hats off to the officers who organized and attended in collaboration with the Winnipeg Fire and Paramedics Department. And then I believe it was on May 22nd, I also attended the awards ceremony of the Winnipeg Police Service that provided long year service, both 20 and 25-year service to the city of Winnipeg in various capacities, and then awards acknowledging service above and beyond the call of duty. I think it's very important that those events are acknowledged, the service that's provided, because it does provide a sense that the individuals are being valued through the work that they're doing on a daily basis. So important to note that. I think it's also a strategy of retention where people in the organization do feel valued for the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to add that to my report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there anything from board members? I'll just take a quick moment. In your report, you had mentioned my appointment, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the province for allowing me to serve on the board for the last 2 years. And I also wish to thank Mayor Gillingham for bringing me back on board and having the confidence in my abilities to be vice chair. So I would just echo those. I know I mentioned them before in our meetings, but I just wanted to put that on the record. So thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, I will need a motion to accept the report as information. Damon? All those in favor? Carried. We're going to move on to item number 2, report from the Chief of Police. Chief?
Thank you and good morning. My report was submitted to you earlier in the week. I'm certainly prepared to answer any questions that any board members may have. The only item that I want to highlight before we move on is just under the section of change management on page 2, the employee assistance program and mental health clinician. Just want to acknowledge the collaboration between the service and the police association to really drive forward some changes in line with the work that Deputy Chief Ali has been leading around real change, real difference. The expansion of the EA program just provides a suite of services to our members, ranging from clinical psychologists to legal counsel and everything in between. So that's been really well received through Blue Cross. The second initiative that we expect to see this year is the addition of an in-house mental health clinician as part of our behavioral health unit. So those are really good initiatives that I think will address many of the concerns brought forward by our members to address self-care and their own wellness. So with that, what I want to spend the rest of my time on is there's been a lot of talk in the community and in the media relative to safety in some of the areas, retail theft. We've been asked to kind of craft together a short-term plan to address some of this, a three-pronged approach, if you will. One that will see us increase our presence in certain areas, specifically the Exchange, the West End, and the Osborne Village. We'll also see some continuation of targeted enforcement in some of the retail space. Joining me today to just talk about that in a little more detail is Superintendent Dave Delisle and Inspector Jen McKinnon. They're each going to present to you briefly some of the initiatives that we're looking to do underway as part of that three-pronged approach, which will also include enhanced community engagement through our community support unit and divisions. So with that, I'll invite Superintendent Delisle to come forward first to talk about some of the issues that he's leading through uniform operations.
Morning.
You can touch on both if you want.
I'll just carry before talking about Project Surge, which was my other agenda item. I'll just give a more wholesome accounting. What the chief was briefing the board on, and that is, so we're looking at enhanced visibility in 3 key areas in the city that we're seeing crime and disorder, and really hearing from citizens and businesses. So that is the Osborne Village area, the Exchange, and the West End. West End is it's been a vocal partner for us advocating for some of the businesses and some of the challenges in the area. So what you're going to see is officers from our community support units from the respective districts doing street level patrols, visibility, obviously enforcement when necessary, checking in with businesses, checking in with residents on a daily basis, on days and evenings, 7 days a week. This is obviously being funded through overtime, but it's allowing our officers who normally would have that task but are consistently being pulled away, as I've talked before many times about special event policing is really changing the face of what we're capable of doing with our current resources. So just as an example, last year we managed almost 300 events, or saw almost 300 events, which again was a year-over-year increase. In June of this year already, we're almost 200 events. So, I mean, special events requirements are ever increasing. And what that's done is drawn our community support unit officers away from the duties that you see them doing on overtime now. And that is really connecting with the community, checking in and dealing with the disorder that's happening. So that's my part of that plan that I can speak. Happy to move on unless there's questions on that part. Okay, so the main reason I'm here to speak to you today is about a targeted project that began within uniform operations, and we called it Project Surge. So everyone's aware, in 2023, we saw numerous high-profile events in our community with youth violent crime. There was significant coverage within the paper, and it does cause the community concern, knowing that these acts were somewhat random. Many of these events were tied to retail theft or robberies of a person. So analysis of who was doing all this, and what they were doing, where they were meeting, began within uniform operations to try to find commonalities between the people involved, as well as the accused and the victims. We examined outcomes from previously identified arrested individuals in these events, as it relates to criminal justice system, specifically the YCJA. There was evidence that some of the alternatives that were being used to the laying of criminal charges were ineffective in reducing this trend. So often our partners in Crown's office and the judiciary are not given the benefit of a fulsome picture of what's happened in the youth's lives when they're appearing before them. Many of these individuals were or are under the care or in the need of many of social services. These decision makers need more complete information to make informed decisions when they're deciding the outcomes of these events. So Project Surge was based on data and analytics aimed to identify those who had demonstrated high risk to commit violent acts, as well as those who they partnered. So this was a person-focused project, not strictly based on locations within the city. We were following them where they were meeting up, where they were going, what they were doing, and who they were associating with. And that's what tied people within this project. It wasn't just random youth violence across the city. It was specific youth who were meeting up with each other that were getting linked together. So Surge also sought to identify some home life factors so that WPS can partner with other agencies to address the root causes driving the behavior in the long term. As you've heard, police have a role in crime and disorder, but we're not the experts in dealing with the root causes. There's other partners that need to be brought in. But the intent is to provide these partners with accurate data to help them efficiently identify those who are in need of intensive services and supports. So Project Surge began in earnest in early March, and internally it involved coordination and communication between all 4 of our uniform divisions, as well as support and information to our major crimes division, as many of these assaults were very serious and the investigations would flow to major crimes. Major crimes also supported the project with Crime Atlas. So a real-time dashboard was created for officers to have immediate and accurate data at their fingertips on all the targets within Project Surge. So at a given time, they knew who was wanted, who was on an order, where they were hanging out, who they were hanging out with, and what incidents they were involved. And not just criminal incidents, whether they were missing persons or other victims. Externally, it involved engagement and support with an assigned Crown Attorney so that they were provided a fulsome picture and were understanding exactly what we were trying to achieve here. We attended pre-sentence hearings to provide context for the judiciary and caregivers such as CFS, probation. We offered referrals to cultural supports and gang turnaround program. We also had engagement with security operators of the retail establishments for ongoing support and advice for when they came across these situations, what to do. We also had engagement with the caregivers, the specific group homes that these youth were residing in to offer them some help with care plans and support instructions. So the results of the project are significant. That's why I'm here today. Our focused attention has resulted in a 50% decrease in these youth being involved in violent crime since we started. So there's 117 youth that we had identified as associated to each other, going around the city and committing these crimes. Since the beginning of 2023, we scanned back. These youth had been involved in 1,795 police incidents. It was a significant amount of work being created by select few individuals. And this, they were presenting not only as accused, but they were also presenting as victims. Since the project started, 519 interactions with the police with these youth. So part of what we were doing is once they were arrested, we would be doing curfew checks to make sure that they were abiding by the conditions or not associating with those they weren't supposed to associate. If they were wanted, we were checking the addresses where they were hanging out and where they were residing to arrest them. So dating back to the beginning of 2023, 435 arrests of these 117 youths, which is significant. So they're being re-arrested over and over. And since the project started in early March, we've arrested these youth 150 times. So policing is one aspect of this problem. As you know, we need longer term solutions to get these youth on an off ramp. So our critical next steps are to meet with government officials and set these youth on a different path. You know, many of the youth in the project have been victimized multiple times, including multiple sexual assaults. And our MMIWG strategy does lead us to look at circumstances that put people at risk and trends to identify folks who need other supports so that they don't follow down that path. So that's what I'm here to share today. That's subject to questions.
Can you just comment on or remind us, I know you said it, but who are the partners in Project Surge that you were working with?
So certainly within the justice system, crowns and judiciary at sentencing hearings. Again, we're looking to government to meet with us and we're trying to find dates so that we can actually focus them on, in fact, we've looked at the totality of the 117 youth that we're dealing with in this project. There are 30 youth who are responsible for the vast majority of all this crime. And so we think that there's a real, tangible, definable group that is achievable here. So it's hard, you know, there's 10,000 youth in here, but if we focus on these 30 that are creating a significant amount of harm in the community and certainly police work, then we will have a significant impact on crime in the city and a better outcome for youth. So partners, and again, we're trying to offer supports with everyone who these youth are coming across. So like I said, the group homes where they're residing, giving them support plans and instructions. Where they're attending some of the malls, we've got instructions and support to the security, the business operators there. But we really do need kind of the wraparound support plan to be our next step in this.
So when you mentioned next steps, and you had earlier mentioned about the initiative, focusing on those three kind of biz zone or retail areas, Osborne Exchange and West End. Could the model out of, and maybe they go hand in hand, but the model used in Project Serve be used in that initiative? When you're going out and you're going to start hitting these streets and finding out, talking to those retailers, hitting it 7 days a week. Is it the same type of model? Do they go hand in hand? How do you see that operating?
Yeah, so Project Surge, it absolutely reflects the way we do business. We are a data-driven business, and we look for patterns and links. So Surge was a result of a lot of hard work by some members who started to see the same names, same associates at different places across the city, and started to track back. Where are they getting together? Who are they hanging with, and what are they doing? So certainly, we have a data plan in hand with the increased presence plan that's about to begin here, so that we can actually, again, have a dashboard and track who we're talking to, what the issues are, what's going to solve it, and who do we need to partner with to address it. So same type of work.
Great, thank you. I'm looking to other board members. Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for that presentation, Superintendent Delisle. I was intrigued when we met last week to discuss this, and that it's now coming forward at our public meeting. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, in terms of all the work that's being done, and you were clear in stating that it's a certain segment or a certain population of individuals that are repeatedly committing these crimes, and then the measures of interaction that you take as a service, imposing curfews and following up and things like that. But is there a different agency perhaps that could follow up and do a lot of that work so that police are back on the street? Whether it's probation officers or social workers that follow up in a meaningful way so that the conditions of their release are being met and that they're not back out on the street committing more crimes.
I think there's a number of government departments that all have a role to play in this, and not the least of which is folks who can look at where these kids are living, and what are the conditions that's allowing them or driving them to be not present in the moment following a normal pattern of life there, right? So, our officers are extremely frustrated day in and day out, where we are bringing youth who are missing back to group homes, and within the hour they're out again, missing again. So we're constantly chasing in a cyclical manner here. But I think government is best positioned and focused to really look at that living condition, the totality of the youth circumstances, and look at what supports need to be put in place or what living conditions need to be adjusted such that they're actually not constantly missing or out associating with others, creating harm in the community.
And just to clarify as well, these calls are separate than the other calls that are being received for wellness checks and mental health and wellness in the community. So that's above and beyond what we're experiencing here in terms of youth crime and violence.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely.
So thank you for that. I am glad to hear that there's that shift in not just responding, but acknowledging to the situation of our youth. Hurt people will hurt people. And it is going to take a circle of care to change that for these kids. And, calling on not just the provincial government, but the Indigenous government's assistance with these kids when it's appropriate is super important, because from a community perspective, I think that's one of the things that can really help. And newcomer communities assisting on that too when appropriate as well. And I think that having Justice come to the table with programming that would appropriately respond to what they're seeing. They are the experts in this field and they need to be at the table with this. And those who are providing care both in custody and in community. I think tangible support, all of these things are great, and participating in not just responding to the crime, but seeing these kids, I think is really good. And it's a great start to trying to figure out how to help these hurt kids stop hurting.
Chief, did you have anything for that?
So I'm gonna press on and I'll summarize it at the end. So thank you, David. So the other thing that we hear often in the community is concerns from retailers and concerns from customers that attend to those retail stores. We have had some messaging and media releases in that area in the past. This is just an opportunity to invite Inspector McKinnon to come forward and kind of outline some of the things that we have been working on throughout the year and how the
Point of order. Point of order. Do we still have quorum?
Yes. We're fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Continue, Chief.
and the efforts that have been made to address some of those concerns fall into this three-layered short-term strategy that we're entering into here. So I'm going to ask Inspector McKinnon. As you know, she's the inspector of our Major Crimes Unit. She's been involved in leading some of this work, and I'll ask her to outline it for you.
Welcome, Inspector.
Good morning. As the chief said, my purpose here today is to provide you with an overview of the retail theft problem in our city and speak to our approach our service has been taking to address this issue. I'll highlight relevant data points and to provide a historical and geographical context to this important issue. In 2023, the Property Crimes Unit was tasked with 16,943 incidents. 30% of those were related to retail theft. When I'm asked how I would describe this current shoplifting situation in our city, all I can say is it's complicated and it's challenging. The average number of reported shoplifting incidents over the past 10 years was 4,700. The highest year was in 2019, reporting 11,567 occurrences. This was attributed to the sharp increase of shoplifting at our liquor marts. Moving into 2021, there was a decrease in occurrences that coincided with the pandemic store closures. With the exception of 2019, 2023 reported the highest volume of shoplifting occurrence in the past 10 years, reporting 6,930 incidents. This was an increase of 45% over 2022 and a 14% increase over the 5-year average. If 2024 continues at this rate, it will far exceed our 2020 years.
With that said, recent reporting describes Winnipeg as the hub of a growing $5 billion annual problem across the country. This trend in shoplifting is not unique to Winnipeg, nor are we the hub. Law enforcement across Canada are having the very same conversations that we are all having here today. In Vancouver, they report 33,787 property-related offenses. Over 12,000 of those are directly related to theft investigations. Calgary reports 50,571 property-related offenses, and well over 25,000 are also reported to theft incidents. To further highlight this sweeping change in criminal activity, our neighbors south of the border have also been experiencing this unprecedented escalation in shoplifting. This has a significant impact on what we're seeing here in Canada. Through social media and TikTok videos, shoplifting is glorified as the victimless crime and shared across our borders. What makes it challenging is that shoplifting is a multifaceted offense spanning a wide variety of social issues: poverty, addictions and mental health, crime of opportunity, organized sale of stolen property, and mirrored behavior that we're seeing on social media. Why it's complicated is because a singular approach to shoplifting doesn't address the problem in its entirety. Recognizing a multifaceted problem requires a multi-layered approach, identifying social economic motivators and connection to community resources, mental health and addiction referrals, visible deterrent for public safety of the consumer and the workforce alike, focused enforcement to address chronic offenders and accountability, dedicated investigations into disrupting organized distribution of stolen property, and most important, collaboration with the retail community, both large and small. External partnerships such as Crime Stoppers to engage the public's assistance in bringing awareness, Manitoba Justice, and lastly, communication and accountability to our community through our local media. November 2023, the Property Crimes Unit collaborated with the Retail Council of Canada, dedicating resources to a national blitz over the holiday season. Studying previous enforcement projects from out west, it revealed that the blitz model was successful in identifying hotspots and effecting a large number of arrests in a short period of time. However, this is only a temporary solution that simply moved the problem to other locations. Winnipeg took a different approach, which later became known as the Retail Theft Initiative. The purpose was to facilitate an ongoing, layered approach to retail theft that is sustainable over time and involved partnering with our retail community. Incorporating what we learned from the Blitz model, we utilized crime analysis to identify hotspots and peak times. Focused enforcement was deployed in collaboration with retailers and their loss prevention teams over the month of November leading to the holiday season and Christmas. Chronic offenders were identified, specifically those with warrants for shoplifting incidents. Resources through the Major Crimes Unit and uniform officers, both in General Patrol and our Community Support Unit, were engaged to locate and arrest these offenders on outstanding warrants. Partnering with Crime Stoppers to highlight retail theft through the publication of the top 10 most wanted retail theft offenders, and informed and engaged the public for assistance. We worked with Manitoba Prosecutions to address what many feels is the revolving door of the justice system when it comes to property crime. Looking at disrupting chronic offenders by implementing conditions on release orders meant to discourage and prevent repeat behavior. And lastly, we engage with mainstream media to not only reach our community, but put those responsible for these crimes on notice. This strategy was circulated through social media platforms such as TikTok and successfully reached a diverse demographic. As a result, a total of 264 individuals were arrested for shoplifting incidents. Furthermore, 2023 saw a drop between in November and December that wasn't observed in 2022, reporting a 14% decrease in shoplifting. It should be clear that this decrease cannot solely be attributed to this initiative, but in tandem with special duty presence in retail locations and projects run out of our community support divisions throughout the city. After the holidays, not unlike our law enforcement partners out west, the retail theft rebounded. The upward trend in shoplifting continued in the first quarter of 2024, increasing 42% over 2023 and 29% over the 5-year average. May 2023, we had 2,981 reported incidents, and at the end of May of this year,
We have 3,196. During the first quarter of 2024, the Property Crimes Unit entered into investigations focused now on disrupting the organized offender and distribution of stolen property through online markets and various avenues. As a result of these investigations, 23 individuals were arrested and over $297,000 in reported stolen property. This did not include an investigation into a $1.5 million worth of stolen iPhones. It was a very exciting investigation. These investigations range from groceries, tools, clothing, cosmetics, and electronics from retailers throughout the city. Moving into spring break, we anticipated students picking up extra shifts, friends gathering to meet, and families out spending time together. The goal was to coordinate a visible presence throughout our city to enhance public safety for the community and work with those in the retail industry. The Property Crime Unit collaborated with community support units across the city in an effort to deter shoplifting and provide our community with an enhanced feeling of public safety. We then followed up with another focused enforcement project utilizing covert operations from April into May. This resulted in 22 individuals recovering and recovering over $2,000 in stolen property. One may claim we are only scratching the surface of this ongoing issue, and I'd argue that the most insignificant outcome has been the connection between the Winnipeg Police Service and the retail community as a whole. Recognizing we can't tackle this alone has opened the doors of communication between our service and those most affected by crime. Retailers in the community have stepped forward to work in collaboration with their service and have joined together to support each other. As a police service, it's breaking down silos within our own organization, which is important, resulting in coordinated effort from our uniform patrol, our community support units, community relations unit, crime analysts, investigators from property, major and financial crimes unit, all with the support of our executive management team. With the most recent public safety summit, it has further brought our service and various community resources to the table together, sharing a collective voice to work towards for a safer community for our citizens. But I think it's very clear today with everyone that has spoken that this is something that the police service cannot do.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No? Clearly, lots of, oh, Mr. Chair, yes.
Thank you for your report, Inspector McKinnon. I'd be interested to know some of the stakeholder groups that you're continuing to work with. You mentioned the Retail Council of Canada. Are you working with the business associations as well as individual businesses as well?
Yes, sir. We've obviously Retail Council of Canada was the introduction to the associations and retailers. We've got a working group. It's a complicated thing because Winnipeg, we have lots of businesses and we have lots of large retailers, box stores, the malls, and then we have the smaller individual business. And I think the struggle we're having in the smaller community is making connections to all of those small business and bringing them together. With the larger box stores, that's been successful. They've gathered as a group and I regularly meet with them. And I also bring in our divisional commanders from the districts across the city to now make those introductions so that it's not just me, it's they have access to the commanders and the resources in the area. I've recently met with Brian Sharpstein in regards to the exchange and had conversations with him in regarding the same similar thing, bringing the smaller businesses together so that if they make those connections amongst themselves, we'll come to the table and participate. You are probably already aware of the Osborne Village. I was invited to sit in regards to a meeting in regards to the crime that was going in Osborne Village. And I brought Inspector Max Swedell he's the commander of the West District, but I also brought community relations from our service that have information in regards to our community contacts and safety planning and what they can bring to the table. So really, that's what I've been working on as of late.
Yeah, and that was my follow-up question with respect to, as was mentioned by PAC, the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, went forward with their controlled entrance, which seemed to move the problem to restaurants and bars where, again, when I met with the Restaurant Association of Manitoba, they talked about people walking into their establishments, going behind the bar and pilfering alcohol. And then when they're approached, they brandish a weapon. So again, that seemingly that activity has moved to other businesses. And so by inviting the community support units, are they able to pass on and disseminate information to keep themselves secure, or some crime prevention techniques that might be deployed or considered to enhance security at their establishments?
Yes, and that's part of this multi-layered approach from our service. And that's to my point is that, I do the investigations, community support has a visible uniform presence. But we also forget that we have a community relations division within our police service who do this work. Recently, I connected them because we have some newcomers that have established a business who were the victim of a violent retail theft and didn't know how to handle it. So we have officers within the community relations now that we are engaging them to connect with these businesses to come up with safety planning and how to handle, and also reporting. How do you make these reports to the police service? If you don't make the reports, we can't investigate and respond to what we don't know. And our community relations has really stepped up and come on board with providing that information to retailers. The other thing that we educate businesses on is you can have a hand in how you participate in this type of enforcement within our city in regards to retail theft. And that's the ergonomics of your store and how you set up and display and how you have your business. We also can go in and provide assistance. I think the idea is that we have to buy the most expensive security cameras. And as we know, a lot of mom and pop stores, this is their livelihood and they can't necessarily make that investment into the electronics. But there are things that they can do to help thwart or make things more difficult. So we utilize all areas of the service to provide that information to them.
Well, I do know that the provincial government did offer up, I think it was $300,000 for businesses and homeowners to buy security cameras and get a rebate towards that purchase. So I'm hoping that individuals or businesses have taken up that program and fully subscribed it, so that again, security cameras and motion activated lights are part of the crime prevention efforts that could be undertaken to help reduce crime in the neighborhoods and in businesses, and at least provide that information out to police in the event that there is a break-in or something like that happens.
Yes.
Anybody else? Clearly, with all the information provided to the board today and to the public, there is a lot happening in this, and that it's being taken very seriously, and you're continuing to work with partners and getting the message out. Chief, what would you say to people in the public who aren't listening to us online today, who aren't hearing all of the work that you're doing? What would you say when they say, it's not working because I just saw something last night? Or what would you say when, we know it here, we people who are witnessing or seeing it, but I just want to give you the last word on that piece.
Well, I think in some cases, people are commenting and they're not informed of what's happening throughout various partnerships and the work that's being done. Inspector McKinnon alluded to the third layer, which is community engagement. I know Superintendent Emerson, she is not present with us here physically, but she's logged in and watching that. Jen alluded to some of the work that they're doing behind the scenes as well. We have a community relations division that will be the follow-up to a lot of the work that's being done in the retail space and a lot of the work being done by the community support units and uniform operations that was outlined by Superintendent Dallel. So these are all essential parts of what I would consider to be, at this time, a pretty robust but short-term plan. As it was mentioned, right now, we're doing a lot of this on overtime. And a couple of things I want to say to that. First of all, I want to acknowledge the province for, allowing us to work with them to sort of come forward with some of the funding that will allow us the flexibility to concentrate on these areas in the short term. But it is short term. One of the things that was alluded to is a lot of our resources are being pulled away from the regular duties to deal with the public order demand that's out there. And it doesn't appear to be any end in sight with that. I want to acknowledge our members here because this is overtime. They are giving up their own time to come in and try to serve the community in a way that we can't sustain long term. So I guess with that, I would say that I look forward to collaborating further with the province and with the board on how we can sustain that longer term. The reality is that the demand on policing right now is greater than the resources that we have. And we've seen this in our history in the past. Things ebb and flow with the demand. Our authorized count right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,375. When I began as chief, we were around 1,450. So we've scaled back with demand, and I would offer to the board right now that we are seeing a time when there is a greater demand on police, and I think some discussion needs to be had about how we might enhance our resources going forward to address those demands. As you saw with downtown safety and foot patrol, these things can't be done quickly. It takes a lot of time and effort to recruit and plan for that. You know, we made a commitment last year to double up our foot patrol. We're not quite there yet. You know, we expect to have about a dozen officers join the 25 that are out on foot patrol in the coming months. The rest actually won't catch up until the new year. So these cycles take over a year to catch up. Some of these other initiatives that we're talking, our community support officers right now are being pulled away to do public order things as opposed to working in the community. We are hoping that some of the overtime will allow us to address the public order things so that our community support officers can actually work in the community again. So I think those things are important. Contrary to the opinion of some people in the community, I think the people want to see us in the community and they want to work with us, not the other way around. So I'm really encouraged by this as a short-term plan. I want to acknowledge the province, but there's more discussion that needs to take place as we go forward. I don't want to burn our people out as well. Again, they're coming in on their own time to try to address the situation. So I think I'll leave it at that. Certainly, if there's any questions from the report I submitted or any questions around the short-term strategy, happy to take them.
I'm just looking around the room. I see no hands. What I did want to comment and or leave you with is that I had the honor of bringing greetings on behalf of the board to the recruit class number 169, and it was an honor to be there and take part in that, and you know, see them all stand there with great pride and listen to their families. You know, this is not an easy profession. We all know that. But as I gave my greetings, I looked out and they were all ready to step up. So I want to, through you to them, is to say thank you very much for that. I wish them well. It's been 3 weeks, so I'm sure that they are learning probably hard and fast of what is really like out there, away from behind the books and stuff like that. But I just want to reiterate that how proud we are of them, how the board supports them, and thank them for their service.
Thank you for that. I've certainly had the opportunity to cross paths with some of the recruits since they were assigned to the field. They're all very excited to be out there.
Great, thank you. Daphne?
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch base a little bit on the maintenance of peace and safety that the police play in our fundamental right to protest and gather. I think that's an important role in it. I can see from all of the information that's presented that people's right to protest and their wanting to have a voice is becoming more and more and more frequent. And I think that as we go forward, something more permanent needs to be put in place and supported by the province to acknowledge that these supports are being done, you know, by overtime and extension and pulling resources from other areas. And I think it's important for us to continue to monitor that and advocate for more permanent resources to address these, because I think that based on what we're seeing across the world, people want to activate their voice and they want to do it safely. And you know, counter protests happen, and that requires a presence in there to keep everybody safe. And I think we have to acknowledge that that is our new way of life, and how do we respond to that in a more permanent way? And I think that's a discussion that we need to continue to have here, because that really is a prevention piece that we need to look at. So thank you for that.
Just on that note, I just want to remind the board that we have shifted the way we deploy in that area now. So, you know, in historically or in the past, we would call out a full-time public order unit. When I say full-time, is they're specially trained to come out and deal with public order events. What we have found now, and it really dates back to the convoy protest that we experienced a couple of years back, is we've had to provide equipment and training to all of our members in the front line so that they can quickly shift into that role if they're called upon to do that without the benefit of the planning that comes with some of the event planning. So that's not unique to our city. Every major city in the country is experiencing the same issue. And I would say some cities are experiencing a lot more concentrated than we are. I had a conversation with Chief Myron in Toronto last week. He has spent $8 million on overtime just on public order. So, you know, we're managing here quite well, but it is taking our people away from the duties, the regular duties that we're assigning them. So it is an issue that needs to be discussed further with the board and council.
And I think, Chief, you've mentioned to us that this is becoming regular business. We've heard that before, and I think that's why, you know, we talk about it in our business plan, right? It's something that we're, you know, keeping up with. It's important for us to know what the service is doing, and so we will continue to.
And you make a good point, and I know that's later in the agenda, but event management and event planning, that is one of the issues that's reported on in the business plan.
Yeah, so we're keeping on top of it. The information is flowing through, so thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, can I get someone to accept the report as information? Daphne? All those in favor? Carried. On to item number 3, report from the Secretary. Madam Secretary.
My report is online for anybody to have a look at. I attended all of the events that the chair and the balance of the board attended. The big work for the administration of the board right now is planning the recruitment, which I'll be reporting on later in the meeting. Unless there's any
Questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motioner to accept this as information. Damon? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. On to item number 4, Winnipeg Police Service 2024 first quarter business plan report.
Thank you. Of course, our business plan was submitted to you in advance. I'm not going to go through the whole business plan. It is something that many of the items are reported on routinely. There are just 3 things that I want to highlight for you. The first one is a new objective that will be in the business plan going forward. We are in the midst of establishing an integrated missing persons unit that will see a dedicated missing persons coordinator doing the intake and the triage for missing persons for the entire province in concert with the RCMP and Manitoba First Nations. It's an initiative that Deputy Chief Bowers is leading. We have finished our construction. That whole unit, the integrated unit, will operate out of our police headquarters. It will be something that we report on as part of the business plan going forward as they become more established in that area. I can tell you I was at a conference with missing and murdered women in Saskatoon earlier in the month. It was one of the topics that was shared with conference attendees and was well received along with our family liaison position. You're familiar with the work that Angie Tuesday does on our behalf. We'll be taking on additional family liaison positions to help us manage in that space around missing persons as well. So that's clearly one of the objectives I wanted to highlight for you. The other thing I wanted to highlight was, and there are a number of new metrics within the business report. I won't go into them all, but one that I did want to highlight for you is under the Manitoba Integrated Violent Offender Apprehension Unit, which is on page 4. And, you know, we're monitoring very closely offenders that are apprehended while they're on bail or parole or probation. That's something that we are hearing across the country. As you know, there were revisions made to Bill C-48 to address bail reform by law enforcement across the country. It will be something that our services and services across the country pay close attention to. As we've reported in the past, almost 1 in 5 of those that we arrest for violent offenses are people that are on probation or bail. So that's a significant number and something worth monitoring as we go forward. The last item that I want to highlight for your attention is in the area of connected officer. As you know, certainly through my career, if I've seen one thing changes the way that we collect and manage information, it just makes us more effective in the field. I want to date Art and I, but when we started, we just had two-way radios in the car. Now we're at a place where our members are carrying smart devices in their pocket, provides them with access to information, the ability to dispatch, and the ability to collect evidence, whether that be statements, photographs, video. I really see this as the next evolution in change and efficiency for our service. I mention that now because we have now our Division 11 and in particular our foot patrol officers have all been issued now with smartphones that are connected this way. The caution that I bring forward is you might see our members with their head down on their devices more than you have in the past. They're not necessarily surfing the net here. They're engaged with many of the databases and many of the tools that we provide for them to do their job more effectively. So connected officer is on page 13. It's one of the items in Rule 3. So with that, unless there are other questions for the business plan, those are the 3 things that I wanted to highlight for you this evening.
Thank you. That is a great message to forward to the public that, you guys are actually working when you're looking at your phone. So are there any questions from the board? Seeing nothing further, can I get a motion to accept the report as information? Daphne? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Report number 5, Code of Equal Service 2024 first quarter budget update.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our director, Tara Halaka. She'll walk you through the quarter.
Good morning. So my quarter 1 update is an overall financial forecast for the year ending 2024. The service is expecting to have a shortfall on the mill rate of 4.5 million for 2024. 600,000 is related to a traffic enforcement revenue shortfall, and 3.9 million is attributed to a shortfall on the $7 million expenditure management target. At the end of quarter 1, the service is expecting to achieve 3.1 million of the $7 million target. So that's just shy of half. Those savings will be by way of a few things: salary and benefits savings, primarily from the hiring duration of the professional staff complement, accommodation savings related to the timing of the new North District Station occupancy, and additional unbudgeted revenue. There would have been an additional 2.5 million towards the target if it were not for an unrealized escalation on the public safety basket funding, inflationary pressures, and an upward trend in the use of overtime. There are additional details on the drivers behind the shortfall within the report. And that concludes my summary update. Thank you.
That's great. Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much for that report. And again, it is a first quarter update. So with the shortfall, there's not necessarily a need to sound the alarm bells. Obviously, it could get worse, but there's also room for improvement in terms of that shortfall. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. Still very early in the year.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to speak to, since I've been on the board, we've talked about photo enforcement and our conversations with the province and changing regulations on that to where are things at with that today?
Well, I think during my term as chief, that's been an issue that's been very frustrating. But what I can say is we are probably further now in engagement with the provincial government over changes to the regulations than we have been for a very long time. So I'm hopeful that the changes that are required are being contemplated that will allow us to upgrade our equipment. That's been the key issue is our equipment is antiquated and it's unsupportable now. We know that automated enforcement is a good way to do speed enforcement for sure. We think with changes to the regulations will free us up in both upgrading the existing equipment, but giving us flexibility to move into areas that didn't exist 20 years ago when automated enforcement was first introduced.
Well, thank you for that update. Any questions from anyone else on the board? No? Can I get a motion to accept the report to be forwarded?
To receive as information and forward to the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and with information.
Damon? Yeah. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Great. On to number 6, the Winnipeg Police Service 2023 Annual Report.
Thank you. Just to put this into context, as you know, we are an accredited police organization. We have been accredited for well over 30 years. We go through some pretty rigid auditing and part of what we do to meet compliance in that, we're expected to report on certain areas. These 3 reports are a demonstration of compliance in each of these areas. So we have 3 reports that were submitted earlier for you. I'll quickly touch on the 3 of them. The first one, the agenda shows, is the Bias-Free Policing and Professional Standards Unit report. Just to summarize for you, our Professional Standards Unit received 68 complaints in 2023. That's slightly lower than the 5-year average, which is usually in and around 75 complaints. Of those complaints, about 60% of them were external. They came in from external complaints, and about 40% of them came internally, where our own people were reporting. Of those 68 complaints, 30 were resolved without the need of a formal investigation. Generally, what happens in those cases, our professional standards people are able to show people our policies or explain the laws that sort of govern police and generally satisfy people about what they may have witnessed. Of the 68, we had 38 formal investigations that were conducted. That is definitely on par with our 5-year average. Now, specific to bias, 4 complaints out of those 30 were thought to be related to improper bias. Now, 2 of those investigations were concluded once they were investigated, and it was determined that the members actually acted appropriately. 1 was determined to be unfounded, and the fourth case, was closed when the complainant decided not to continue on with the process and actually decided to go to Bureau instead of professional standards. So that's kind of the highlight of that particular report.
Mr. Chair, do you have a comment on that report or?
Yeah, no, I was, the attachment use of force, that's what I was going to comment on.
All right. Here now, Chief.
Okay, moving on the agenda is the criminal flights, pursuits, and armored vehicle report. Again, just some of the highlights here. Just to remind the board, our policy is such that our members will only initiate a pursuit for a known criminal code or CDSA offense. So we won't engage in chasing after anyone in a vehicle pursuit unless it's believed they've breached the criminal code. What I can tell you is that we were engaged in 66 pursuits in 2023. That's a 16% decrease from the previous year. 46 of those pursuits were aborted. So that's an increase in the number of aborted pursuits. And it's policy that dictates that our supervisors can abort a pursuit. Our comm center and duty office can abort a pursuit, and actually our own members can self-abort if they determine that the situation is too unsafe to continue. So that speaks well to policy compliance there. Of that, 3% of the pursuits that we were involved in, 5 individuals were injured. 2 of the individuals injured were our own members. So what else can I tell you? Air One factors in when it's available. 12 of the 66 pursuits involved Air One. I bring that up because they're a game changer when it comes to pursuit. Our units on the ground don't have to engage in a way that puts them or anyone else in an unsafe situation. The helicopter can monitor, and no one can really get away from the helicopter. They can coordinate things quite well. Generally speaking, when they're involved in something, it ends well and not with injury or harm. The other thing I should highlight for you is that the armored vehicle response, the ARV, the armored response vehicle, was deployed 76 times for tactical operations. 57 of those were planned events, including 1 hostage situation. So those are the highlights from that.
Carry on, and I'll ask one last question to the board when you're done.
Okay, moving along then to the use of force report. As you know, anytime we're engaged in any kind of use of force, we're obliged to report on it. In 2023, the police were dispatched to over 247,000 events. Of those, 863 were incidents that resulted in either the application of force or the presentation of a weapon to gain compliance. So that's less than half of 1%. And, that's, I think it kind of falls in around 0.35%. It is a very small percentage of the interaction that we have in the community. There was an increase in the number of situations where members encountered volatile subjects with increased risk of death and grievous bodily harm. But I thought they did a very good job in engaging with that. The percentage of members and subjects injured in physical conflict decreased over the 5-year average. And then from a training perspective, our recruits, our cadets, our CPOs, which do the processing, prisoner processing, and also our senior members all have to recertify each and every year. So they go through this training on an annual basis so that it stays fresh. So those are the highlights from the use of force report for this year. Overall, all 3 reports, they're all within our 5-year average. Actually, some are even better than our 5-year. I've no real concerns and no trends that are being identified.
And apart from being part of your accreditation and part of the policy report, I mean, we look at these reports, and take them very seriously, of course, but they feed into our overall strat plan. And so when we do sit down again and have those discussions, these reports are very necessary to help us guide us through that. Mr. Chair, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that report, Chief Smythe. With respect to use of force, I know that there is a suite of different levels of engagement in terms of use of force, from presence of the weapon to actually having to use more aggressive means of taking control of the situation. Are there analytics that provide a sense of what mitigation method is used more often than not, and whether more training can go into that in terms of de-escalating situations?
So just one small point to correct your framework there. It's not the presence of a weapon, it's just our presence in uniform that can act as a level of deterrence, ranging right through to lethal force. As you may have noticed in the report, there are a number of charts on page 2, 3, 4, and 5 that break down the levels of force that were used over a 5-year period and the type of force that was used in there. So it speaks specifically to what areas and what level of force we are both meeting and having to resort to resolve the situation.
Has the current context in policing, dealing with potentially volatile situations, had an impact on one of those areas more than the other?
Well, the reality is we're only having to resort to force, as I said, less than half of 1% of the time. So that tells me that the vast majority of our engagement in the community is done in a way that doesn't involve a level of force at all. The level
And
of,
that's acknowledged.
the level of force that is mostly used is we encounter defensive resistance the most by suspects in the community when force is required. Soft, empty hand control, which may mean taking hold of someone, wrist, joint locks, that kind of thing. That's the type of force that is used most often, as opposed to intermediate weapons or hard, empty hand control or deadly force.
Thank you.
I'm looking to the other board members. Anything further? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the report as information, please? Damon? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 7, allocation of the Winnipeg Police Service 2024 operating budget.
Well, we've already passed, and it's going to be, it's advancing.
So item number 8 is for information and before the SBC of finance.
Yes.
Finance.
Yep.
Okay.
The motion?
A motion to move, Daphne? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next report.
Item number 8.
That is also me. The board is on target. We had a reduction in our budget for 2024 of 10,000. We are actively engaged in our consultation activities. That's where the big expenses are going to lie over the course of this year. In our recruitment activities and in the development of the next 5-year strat plan. We're on target. There's no issues with the budget unless there are any questions about it. It's very tiny.
That is, just for clarity, our own.
Yes.
Our own budget.
Yes.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept and move this report to Special Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development?
Yeah.
Damon, Jack, we both. Oh. All right,
Damon Johnson, you have that one?
yes. Sorry, Mr. Chair, did you have something to say or you were just?
No, I guess if I'm acting in the capacity of vice chair, I do become a voting member, correct? Move the motion?
Oh, so you were trying to move the motion. Sorry, I will watch closer next time when you raise your hand. So all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. And now we will go on to report number 9, which is the report of from the Police Chief Recruitment Committee. Madam Secretary.
Okay, so the Police Chief Recruitment Committee was established by the board on December the 8th. Has a mandate to assist the board with the recruitment and selection of the next chief. The committee's terms of reference were approved on that date. And through an RFP, a request for proposal, MMP was selected to assist in the search. They are actively engaged in the pre-processes which are intended to update the profile of the chief. Just for public information, on the board's website, we have now 2 invitations to 2 public town halls. Focus groups, as indicated earlier by the Police Accountability Coalition, are being pulled together, and one-on-one interviews with the most sort of involved stakeholders will also go on. The goal there, once again, is to just update the profile and make sure that the profile that is available online that was developed in 2015 reflects all the things that have happened since 2015. And that is a pretty large volume of things. Pandemics and wars and rises in crime and CSI. Bottom line, the work is well underway. And the board is being briefed every 2 weeks on what the activities are that are supporting this. And we'll be present at the public consultations at town halls and present at some of the other work that we're doing. The other thing we're doing is we're accepting online submissions both on the MMP site and on the board site. We have had one, again, the Police Accountability Coalition referred to it earlier, an excellent position paper from that body representing over 100 different agencies on what they would like to see, and we're interested what any members of the public in Winnipeg are interested in seeing in leadership and policing in Winnipeg. So we will be accepting written submissions right up until June 18th, June 20th, June 28th is when we will close written submissions. Delegations are welcome at any of our public meetings, although we only have one more, and that's in September. This work will be completed, we hope, the consultation work, toward the end of June, early July. So, I will provide the web addresses. So the board's email address is wpb@winnipeg.ca. And through our website, www.winnipegpoliceboard.ca. And on the MMP site, there is a survey, in addition to open text documents that the board is happy to review as well, that people are welcome to participate in. I think that is everything for right now. And of course, you can contact the board at any time, or any board member at any time, to provide any feedback that you may have as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Shauna. I just want to reiterate, since the awarding of the contract to MMP, we as a board have been actively engaged and actively been briefed on the progression of that contract to date. Very excited in terms of the work that they've done, and looking forward to the consultation meetings that will be happening in the public sphere. It is an opportunity to provide information and recommendations in terms of what characteristics that they want to see in the next chief. Is the person a collaborator? Does the person work well within the community and work well inside their own service? So these are all opportunities for the public to provide their recommendations. Everything will be taken and will be considered as we move forward in this process. So again, I welcome members of the public to engage with the board, to engage in these consultation sessions, because this is a critical time for our city and as our service moves forward.
Do any other board members? Mr. Chair, would you like to move this report and accept it as information?
Happy to.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that takes us to the end of the meeting. I want to thank everybody in attendance on, either through the web or here in person. Thank you to the executive, and I wish everyone a wonderful weekend. Can I get someone to move for adjournment, please?
If I may, this will be my last opportunity to be with you. And I just really like to say, when you convene again in the fall, I will of course be retired then. It has been nearly 40 years of public service for me. It has been an honor to have served the community with the nearly 2,000 employees of our service who have had the honor of serving with. I've been chief for almost 8 years and could not have done this job without the support of my executive team, most of whom are here, some are watching online, and certainly not without the support of the board during that time. So it's been one of the greatest privileges of my adult life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief, for your service, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you. Right, just one last quick look around and we will adjourn. Damon, can I get you to move that? Thank you. All those in favor? Perfect. Carried.